Can everybody see the screen?
Yes, that's working. Yeah, Dolores.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dolores Chacon, and I'm the manager for Bristol Black Carers. And this was a project that Oasis Talk did with our BME community. And Chris Bowles supposed to be joining me, but I haven't seen her as yet. But I'll continue until then. The overview of the project was to get our BME elders to consider alternative therapies. And we had funding through Bristol Aging Better to do that pilot. And we did it in 3 stages, which you can see 2017 to 2018. We had meetings with the officer who was linking us into the program so that we would be able to design the projects that matched what our elderly want. And then we did another part of it in 2018 to 2020. And then we have the last part still to be completed, and COVID came about, so that didn't take place, unfortunately, but we hope to continue. These are some of the organizations that participated in the group, and the feedback was really positive. If I'm going too fast, please let me know. So we used the aim of co-producing for the partners, because most times people come to you with a project already formulated and it may not be what it is you want. So we worked with every group with Oasis Talk to develop the program unique to each one of the partners in the group. And we had 72 delivery well-being sessions from the groups of 15, all of whom had different experiences because they chose different topics. And what I've included in our slide here is 2 different sessions that we had with our Oasis Talk facilitators and practitioners. So we chose, not we, I should say the elders chose to talk about panic and anxiety because they found that it was rather scary sometimes being an elder person in the community and not knowing how to deal with things, and fear about their illnesses and how to recuperate or revitalize themselves. And then we did a following session on staying well. What are the tips that you need to stay well and how you can practice that at home? Within that, also, we got volunteers to deliver some of the sessions because they were comfortable with the people that they knew. And Chris will do another, well, if she's not here, I'll cover for her. But at the end of our sessions, we had a celebration. And in that celebration, the elders learned to play drums, we sang, we chatted, we had lunch together. So the first photograph that you're seeing is some of the leaders of all the groups that participated. The second photograph is the elders themselves participating in the drumming, and the others where we're having lunch together. Sorry about that. Now, what we understood and learned from the program is understanding culture is not based on the country of birth, but your social and economic background of the individual and the community in which they grew up and where they are now living. So when we talk about culture, we don't have to focus on the country because things change for people. And depending on the age that they came to the UK, things were developed accordingly. And we have to find out from them what their likes and dislikes are in order to be able to provide services for them. Because an example of this is that I remember one of my friends saying to me, her father went into hospital, he's Asian, and he was asked if he wanted a curry, but he had been so long in the United Kingdom that he had baked beans and toast. So we need to ask people rather than assume when we see people what they want. And different methods of approach in that not everybody would accept therapies or engage with you on the first encounter because you say you want to deliver something for them. You have to build a relationship, and you have to understand that not everybody is open to different ways of doing things that they normally do. So we need to build a relationship and conversation with people in order to deliver anything that we want them to participate in. What we also found very fruitful was having somebody from the community understand the program and then translate it into the language that she or he knows about the community, because sometimes we think English is very easy to understand, but the words that we use convey different meanings. So we need people who understand the language of the community to be able to explain that for them. So again, they can deliver the information and advice in a way the community or individual understands. And also, when we are looking at helping people or improving their well-being with the elderly, we need to understand what it is they want and how they can get there and make it as simple as possible. Because our facilitators who participated in the training really enjoyed the training and wanted to know, does it end here? Is it all, or can I go further? And we need to develop clear pathways and mentoring for people who would like to participate further and give more to their community. What Chris did is put the program together, and she got it accredited for the volunteers so that they didn't just do a training program that ended with just a certificate, but it was totally accredited so that they can use it elsewhere in another setting if they wish. So we empowered our facilitators not just to be able to deliver to the small group that they worked with, but also to take it into their churches, into their women's group, into whatever group that they may participate in, because it was an accredited program. And it helped people to break down the myths and stigmas that we have about mental health. Because mental health in our communities is, for want of a better word, looked upon as a bad omen, so that we don't necessarily want to deal with it or talk about it because it's a negative aspect. But we have been able to let people realize that mental health, mental well-being is a natural part of life. So therefore, we bring in all those aspects for them. And Chris has worked on the course content for the facilitators, where it covered the environment, safeguarding, contracting, gaining trust, working with different styles of teaching and learning, and understanding that communication is in various ways. Then introduction to mental health and mental well-being. Like I said, we explore the perceptions, because if you don't know what people think about something, then you will not be able to influence how they change what they do. And according to that, now we were able to focus on what people ask for: relaxation skills, sleeping well, because as you go older and with medical conditions, it affects how you sleep. And if you don't sleep well, then your mental health is not going to be well, because you'll always be agitated and anxious. So we needed to work on those things. And we did share techniques that people have practiced, and feedback was it has worked for them. So what we need to do is establish a program that could be ongoing, that people could come in and come out as they wish when they become empowered and feel comfortable with the techniques that they're practicing. Now, my messages to commissioners is that we need to really look at how we provide in care. One size does not fit all. So if we adopt the true approach of person-centered holistic care, we will have individuals who can take charge of their illness, and if something goes wrong, then they have the backup of the NHS. They have the backup of mental health system. but it will not be their first call. So we are now giving power back to individuals to say, I can control this, I can deal with this, but if something gets worse, I know where to go. And again, when we're working with the BME adults, older people, we should ask them first what it is they would like before we go planning programs and delivering. The other aspect is that the voluntary sector who working with the BME communities already have resources and expertise which can benefit all the other organizations who have the power to develop services, because then we can give you an insight of how to tweak and make your programs more effective. Again, we have programs being developed, new hubs being created, new sites for delivering services being created, but people don't feel comfortable going to areas that they don't know. So we need to use what already exists and develop and enhance some of those places, because once the person is already in that environment, they're not likely to leave. So let's make use of it because they are with us and we should keep them and empower them. So
Dolores, just to
together,
let you know, Chris is
sorry.
here now. Chris is here now. Sorry to
Okay.
interrupt.
Well,
I'm really sorry. I've had serious problems. And Dolores, I don't know where you've got to, but is there anything specific that you want me to say a bit more about?
well, if anyone has any questions about the program, because I just briefly covered what you had written on the slides, so they can get more answers from you about it.
Right, okay, particularly perhaps the volunteer training.
Yes, the volunteer program.
That have actually put together. I mean, I'm happy to answer questions about the wellbeing sessions as well, if anyone's got any.
Here's the question.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Michelle. I manage the program, the Aging Better program in Middlesbrough. Can you tell us what didn't go well? What would, if you did it again, what would you do different, or what mistakes did you make?
Right.
Chris, you want to answer that?
I think part of it, I think the main things were kind of organizational. You know, it was actually sort of quite difficult to sort of, with some groups, to sort of engage in practical terms. You know, sort of information about just things like where and when we were meeting tended to go astray a bit. So I think that would be something that kind of needed to be tightened up a little bit more. What else? I mean, overall, I think a number of things went well. The first thing, though, with the actual wellbeing sessions, which were the taster sessions that we first introduced sort of within the groups, there were varying degrees of buy-in from the individuals within those groups, because we were actually delivering them within the times that they would normally be meeting. Some of them simply wanted to socialise and maybe saw it as a little bit of an imposition. But at the same time, you know, the positive about that was that they were there anyway. They were in a familiar environment. They were with their friends already. And so, you know, we didn't have to set up a kind of a separate set of sort of circumstances for them to be able to engage with the programme. But we did notice that after a while, a lot of those people did gradually start to creep in at the edges and actually start listening to what was being said and participating more actively with the sessions. So ultimately they did come around, but maybe first of all there's a little bit of, you know, sort of people feeling slightly miffed in some instances that their social time was being eroded a bit. But yeah, they would be the main things, I would think.
In answering that also, when you're introducing something that people are not familiar with, we need a little more time to give them to assimilate or think about it before delivering sometimes, so that, you know, you have conversations prior to actually delivering the service, and that tends to give you a better buy-in than saying, okay, we're delivering this and you can attend if you want to or be part of it. But I find when we have conversations, maybe 3 or 4 conversations sometimes before actually giving them to participate into the groups, was how I was able to get a better participation from my service users.
I think that's absolutely right. And we had varying degrees of the extent to which groups had been briefed beforehand. You know, I think Anne Dolores's group were very well briefed, but some of the other groups maybe not quite so much. So when we went in, they weren't really too sure what to expect. And I think that's around maybe sort of making absolutely sure that the people who are heading up those groups actually kind of know what the sessions are about, so that they can pass that information on to people who are going to be attending.
Thank you. Hannah had a quick question, but I don't know if we've got time. You can try, Hannah.
Sorry, it was about translation and whether any of the sessions were actually run entirely in a language other than English. Right. I'm also just interested in the diversity of communities that you've got involved in the programme.
Yeah. The materials at the moment are in English, although there is a move to translate some of those. I also wrote a sort of a 7 steps to wellbeing in later life workbook, which we're in the process of having translated. For the one-to-one sessions, where there was a need for the course, for the session to be delivered in a language other than English, we brought in interpreters, or we used interpreters from within the group. So, you know, we had that, and sometimes we allowed a little bit more time and space for that to be done. I mean, for example, with the Chinese groups, we usually ran them over 2-hour sessions instead of 1-hour sessions, because it took quite a long time for the interpreter to you know, interpret back and forth.
Did you find there were quite a lot of specifically older people's groups across all of the different ethnic diverse communities in Bristol? There
are some communities where there are several groups. I mean, the BAME, the Afro-Caribbean group would be an obvious one. There are several organisations who are working with 4 different Afro-Caribbean groups. There's Bristol Black Carers, which Anne Dolores heads up, but there were also 3 others as well. We worked at one stage with 2 Somali groups. So yeah, there are groups within. And also there was a sort of a bit of a distinction between the sort of male-female as well, particularly in the Somali and Sudanese groups. It tended to be that we were delivering sessions largely to all men or all women. I think that was also true of some of the South Asian sessions as well. So there were kind of subdivisions within the various groups.
Okay, thank you. Thanks very much for the presentation. I think we've been asked to return now.
Yes, well, we can share the presentation because we didn't get down to the last part there, so that's okay.
I'm really sorry that I couldn't get on until the last minute. Thanks, Anne Dolores, for covering. Okay.
So basically, the last slide is telling us that, you know, everything has to work together, and no individual is one thing, is a sum of everything that is involved, and everybody have a different need at different times. So it could be educational, it could be health, it varies with each individual, and all the services should come together to be able to provide that at the time at which the individual needs it.